So the person that's going to tell the next story her name is Michele and I'm very excited to hear her story about the time my family and I fought a prairie grass fire.
Hello. So I'm Michele and I'm going to tell you a story about my family, and this takes you back to 1986, so you can imagine what I looked like in 1986 at the ripe old age of 14. My mother and I had traveled out to western South Dakota because my mother grew up on the Rosebud Indian Reservation, which is where my mom's entire family lives, and some of them still live there today. Specifically, a town called Prarie. And Prarie is on the, if you're familiar with Rosebud, it's on the northwest side of the reservation, and it's a tiny town. There's probably about 500 people there, so I guess it might be bigger than some on the res, but it's about that size. My grandma's house is actually kind of out on its own, although it's kind of in town because the most convenient convenience store in Prarie is less than, like, it's one house away from my grandma's. But then my grandma has a huge space. She has a Quonset. She's got like 3 other little buildings. She's got horses. She has a round curved driveway, and you can enter from both sides. And then adjacent to her, from the front of her house, is a huge yard. I don't even know if it's technically a yard, but I guess it's a block that is uninhabited. There's no houses on it, anything. It's just a gas tank that sits out there. And then where the convenience store used to be, it's the old kind of shelled out building that exists there. So my mom and I, we went and visited, and it was around the 4th of July. And that particular summer, South Dakota was in a high alert for fires. It was drought season and very dry. And so people were talking about the fires going on, and you could see the haziness in the sun from how bad the prairie fires were. And when we went to visit my mother, her siblings always came back and came to my grandma's house, and everybody always hung out. They would take off one day. It didn't matter if we showed up in the middle of the week or whatnot, but they would always be there, and they'd bring their kids. So my mom is the oldest of 7, and they each, I think, they each had like 3 to 4 kids, with the exception of my mom, who just had 2. So you can see it's a big family, and there's a lot of people around. And while we were there, people were saying that my Uncle Jim, who was a really cool guy, would not make it because he was off volunteer firefighting down to the southwest side of Rosebud because the fires were really bad there. And so we weren't expecting to see him at all. And so I think we were there about one day, and it was in the afternoon, and my Uncle Jim showed up. And he had been fighting fires, and he looked like he had been fighting fires. He was in like kind of leathery chaps, and he had really long hair that went down to his butt. He always wore 2 braids, and he just looked windburned, smoke-filled, and he just reeked of smoke. And he had a buddy with him. And they had this pickup truck, and the pickup truck was full of everything you need to fight a fire. So there were axes, there were some hose, there were hoses. He had a whole bunch of blankets. He had some masks for them. He had some buckets in order to, help take out the fire. So his back of his pickup was pretty full of stuff. So we were all like hanging out there and talking, and a lot of times my mom and her siblings would just sit around and talk, and we would just hang out as kids and just listen to them. And so that's what we were doing, and we were on the corner of my grandma's house, and as I told you, it was like a circular drive, right? So my grandma's house sat here, and we were all perched on this corner. We could see out onto that field, and my uncle had his truck parked there. And as everybody's talking, my mom's sister said, "I smell smoke." And we all just kind of looked around, and then one of the other siblings said, "Well, that's because Jim smells like smoke." And everybody started laughing, because they're like, "Oh yeah, that's what it is. Can't be anything else." So they go back to having conversations. And then all of a sudden, one of my cousins like, "Fire!" And as we looked out, my grandma's house is here, we looked to that field, and it's just ablazed in total fire. And my uncle's like, "Quick, grab blankets." So we all, there's like 15 of us, start grabbing blankets, and we run out to that field. I had no idea what to do. I'm 14 years old. I've never fought a fire in my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, stop, drop, and roll, but no, we're actually going to try to put the fire out. And so, you know, it's like something you're not like thinking of, but I just took the lead of the adults, and we went out there. And my mom and my Uncle Jim and her other brother, they went to where the gas propane tank thing was set up, and they started beating back there. And in the meantime, there was another house that actually was occupied by some nuns, and they brought out hoses with water, but it's a huge block, you know? And so my Aunt Ann and I, we go in, and we have the things, and I just remember just like slapping down the fire, but then I would get consumed with smoke, and I would have to run out of the fire and try to like get my wherewithal again and get back to breathing, and I would run back in. And I would start beating the fire again, and I just remember like, is this ever going to stop, or are we going to blow up? But it was the weirdest experience, because never at any time did I feel like we were just going to totally die. Even though like my family was fighting by this propane tank, never did it cross my mind that we could just implode. And while this was taking place, I have a cousin who's about half my age, so I think at the time he's like 7 years old, and his name was Pete. And we often called him Repeat, because whatever you said, he always repeated. And so Pete, in the meantime, my grandma's hanging out in her house. She was not outside with the rest of us. She's sitting inside keeping it cool, because it's hot out, you know? And my grandma is blind. She can't see anything, nor does she move very well. Pete runs in the front door and says, "Grandma, Grandma, there's a fire, there's a fire!" And he proceeds to go out the back door. And she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know where the fire is. There's no one around except for Pete, who keeps making a circle. "Grandma, Grandma, there's a fire, there's a fire!" And so she's like trying to figure out where the fire is and trying to, you know, get herself all situated, like if she needs to get out of the house. And so all I really remember to the ending of that is that I never felt panicked, other than the fact that I was concerned I was going to choke on the fumes a little too much. But my aunt and I just kept going back out. She kept hanging out with me. And then all of a sudden we were able to get the fire out, and everybody sat around and kind of reflected about it and laughed, because my Aunt Ann had said, "I smell smoke," and we all just made fun of her for smelling smoke when the whole field was on fire. So it was a very kind of serene time, and in retrospect, I look back on it, it was actually the last time that my mom's family was all together, because my Uncle Jim, unfortunately, was killed in a car accident about 3 months later. And so it's a very distinctive memory to me of that time, and that my family just kind of worked together, and they put out this fire.